This conference will now be recorded.
Hello?
Hello, can anybody hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now, Pat.
Yes.
Okay. All right, so I'll have to use, now I think it shows that I've got a mic. I don't know.
Oh, here we go.
Does my volume sound all right? Because I'm on the phone.
Yeah,
Sounds good, Pat.
Yeah, Pat.
Thank you. 29.
Judith, you might want to mute your microphone while the meeting's coming to order.
Okay, we get this. Dan is not here yet. Waiting for Dan.
I'm here. I'm here.
Oh, you are?
I'm up here. Yep.
Oh, okay. All right. Sorry, I just didn't see it.
It's okay.
Okay, it's 6:31, and we can open our meeting to the Hull Municipal Light Board, where it looks like we get all members present, with Panos, Phil, and Mike, and some other guests. So, having said that, where we have some guests on board that are watching the meeting, we'll start off, I think, typically start with our some of our original business. I think we'll put that off for a few minutes till we get board. And over the last few months, we've had at least 3, maybe 4 meetings on 2015A, and you know, had different groups have come to us to speak, and about it, and quite a few of the public and everything. So I think it's time that the board gets a chance to just speak amongst themselves a little bit, to see what we think of all of it, and if there's anything worthy of being done. So I'll open it up to the board to get their thoughts on how we should proceed at this point, and to see if anybody has anything interesting they'd like to discuss on the board. Anybody interested in that?
I'll make a couple quick comments, Pat. Good evening, everybody. So I would like us to request that MWIC sells our position or stake in the 2015A project. I believe that the potential savings that we have been advertised were probably more realistic when the board, before I was a member, voted and made the decision. And I think the information and the situation has changed a lot since then. So financially and fiscally, I think that it's in the best interest of the ratepayer for us to attempt to sell our stake in the plant. And beyond just money, there are other aspects, of course, the societal, the environmental impact. I think that it would be a benefit to send the right message that, yes, we have a high percentage of our power from non-carbon emitting, and we're all extremely proud of that. And we're going to continue to, be more innovative and move in that direction closer and closer to zero carbon emitting power sources for Hull. I feel strongly on that. I reviewed the information from MWIC, and I think it was good. And I reviewed information from some of the other presenters we've had as well. And it was helpful for me to hear that although nobody had the same exact number, everyone agreed that somewhere in the middle there is the likely outcome. And even in that middle outcome, there would be a very slight savings, maybe $8 a year for the average ratepayer if we were successful in selling our position. So that's my opinion and my view and perspective.
Thank you. Anyone else? I'll just go that as I've kind of I'll let Phil speak. Go ahead, Phil.
So I think, first of all, that this has been a great opportunity to revisit the project. I have no idea of all the participants project, how many communities had this level of discussion relative to the project. What I do know is no community has withdrawn from the project, including the host community, Peabody, that has a mayor form of government with a city council and a municipal light board. The other point, I guess, so I think Hull really is, by taking on the discussion, the light board, I think, has done the topic a great deal of, done quite a bit of diligence on the topic, which I think is admirable for the light board. And as I understand it, the total amount of energy that we will be getting from this peak power plant amounts to less than, just slightly over half of 1% of our total annual load, meaning that 99.5% of our load is coming from some other source than this plant. And of that 99.5%, 60% is non-carbon emitting. So we're, first of all, way ahead of any state standard. We're way ahead of any federal standard in terms of, where we should be. And we will continue to be ahead as we look at additional sources of non-carbon polluting. So, for folks who are joining the discussion, because I think the light board and myself, some of them were letters that I was copied on, some of them were letters that I think went to everybody collectively. I think we've received maybe something in the order of about, probably about 20 or so letters from Hull residents that are all substantially similar in their verbiage, pleading with the light board to divest of the plant for a couple of major reasons. One would be environmental reason. Another set would be kind of financial, which I think has been kind of the theme of the discussion of folks that want an alternative outcome to where we're at. And then I think we received maybe 6 letters or so from non-Hull residents. And I'm not discounting those letters. I'm just trying to provide the general audience with a sense of kind of where we're at in terms of public commentary. But ultimately, it's obviously a very difficult decision, because what we have learned is if we were to divest, first of all, you can even divest from the plant, because the way the contracts are structured is you cannot leave 2015A unless there's a replacement in place, or you pay for your share and you just walk away from the investment. And so that's the first kind of hurdle. And again, no other community has actually instructed MWIC to try to attain that hurdle. And I think that's for a bunch of the same reasons that people are as conflicted in some other communities as they may be here, because there's some complexity to the talk. The next point is there is no battery peaking plant currently in the marketplace that's been permitted, at least, to provide this online for this purpose by the federal agencies that regulate the grid. There may be at some point in the future, but as it stands now, there is not, and nobody can tell you what would be. So any energy we buy on the spot market is going to be fossil-based energy for peaking. There's no guarantee we're going to have non-carbon based energy to be provided to us for peaking. So, that's what also kind of creates conflict in the decision as you kind of evaluate what you do. Is if there were a battery peaking plant currently online and available, I think the decision might be, in some respects, clearer cut. It may not even, but it still may not be enough to lean you to that decision for any number of other reasons. But the point is that, as it stands now, we know no other participant has left. We are about a 2.5% participant in the total plant. Will represent less than 0.5% of our total annual load for consumption. There is no, if we were to find a buyer, or MWIC were to find a buyer from us, it may be at a discount, it may be at face. We don't know that. But we would still be buying energy on the open marketplace that would very likely have the same fossil footprint. As I look at the scenario, and I look at, projections 10, 15, 20 years out as to what the energy mix is going to be, I think the further you go out on projections of what energy mix are going to be, the softer those projections become. For instance, I think the Biden administration is putting something like $4 or $5 billion into a fund to slow down the decommissioning of nuclear plants, because I realize that nuclear has to be kind of part of the transitory mix as you move from a fossil fuel-based energy foundation to non-carbon foundation. So, where we're going to be in 5 years from now, I think is very an open question. And then there are also, events that could take us beyond our control. Germany and Europe is finding out that their energy plan that they had in place is now completely upended, and they're evaluating, well, how do they either stay on plan or what adjustments they're going to have to make to plan, because a key component of that plan has now become hostile to them or to their interests. So, with all that being said, I just wanted to try to give folks on the call, some additional context, or remind folks of some of the context that we learned as we had this discussion over time. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Phil. All right, I'll just chime in here for a minute. Like I said in the beginning, over the last few months, we've had several discussions on this subject. And I'd like to just check with the board and see what the forward movement should be or not. And I'd like to mention again, also like Phil had just said about that we are already 62% non-carbon emitting, which we've slow and steady been getting to. We've been leaders in the beginning with wind turbines. So the board for many years has moved along this avenue long before we started thinking about some of this, about the non-carbon emitting. And we need to be proud of that. We also need to have an understanding that the Hull Municipal Light Board represents, there are 6,200 meters, 1,000 people in the town. And we represent them to do the best that we can in making decisions for their power. I, for one, think that 6 years ago when we sat at length and listened to consultants and MWEC and educated ourselves on this peaker power plant that runs an average of 260 hours a year, 239 hours a year, is minimal compared to all of the power plants that have to run 24/7, 365 in order to keep us in the comfortable lifestyle that we've been in. The 239 hours, which keeps our energy up to par every once in a great while throughout the year, mostly in the summertime, it's a necessity to be able to have that. We don't have any other choice in the matter right at the moment. We are required to have peak power protection. And I think the board 6 years ago made a wise decision based on our ability to deliver reasonable price, reliable electricity, and taking into consideration all of these subjects that are coming before us now. We had good thoughts to do the right thing for our town. So I, for one, still support this idea of the 2015A. It's the best game in town at the moment. We have no way of knowing that there's something around the corner that would be worth waiting for. Would we be able to wait for it? Because otherwise we have to buy on the spot market. You buy on the spot market, you're going to pay dearly. And this way it gives us the ability to budget for our 6,200 ratepayers over the next 30 years to have a real good idea on what our costs will be. And to not have yo-yo rates up and down, for fuel costs and all kinds of things like that. So myself, I think that the right thing was done and we need to stick with that. So I'd like to just hear from the other board members, or if anybody has any other, thing that we should do or not. And because we need, get this behind us. We have, given it our due diligence to discuss this and invite people to discuss with us. And so I just want to be able to get it behind us.
Yeah.
I'd like to
I'm a
respond to
resident.
some of this before we take a vote, but if the other board members could go ahead, please.
Pat,
Make the public.
okay.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Tom.
Pat, some of those issues that Jake had brought up are, I think we all feel those right now with the global warming issues, sea level rise, carbon. I think those are all issues that we all want to address as quick as we can. But the research that we've done in this, in the 5 years, the fact that we've already entered into a contract and the ability to exit a contract like this is unknown. If it is possible, the costs involved could be significant. The effects on future bonding that the town has could be negatively affected. And the fact that we are looking at establishing the most reliable cost for the most effective rate that we possibly can, the percentage of that this plant's going to be on, and the progress that we have made in this town going non-carbon, and the fact that we've continued to demonstrate that we've been a leader should not be overlooked. If we do take this vote tonight to reaffirm our decision, it shouldn't be assumed that we are pro-fossil fuel, that we are pro-asthma, that we are not doing our due diligence in trying to establish the best and most reliable course of action for the citizens of Hull. So I appreciate all the activities that people have put into bringing this topic together, but I feel that the decision that we had made prior is still the best decision that we can go forward on.
Okay. Dan?
Well, I want to thank everybody for coming here to this meeting. Well, coming here virtually. I've been to 3 or 4 of these meetings that we've had quite a lot of people show up and present information. And I think that we've been very patient. I know I have been very interested in what everybody has said. But unfortunately, I don't think that the information or the concerns that I've had were really addressed, or any of the information that I wanted to get has actually been given to me by the people that have gone to these meetings. Particularly, I was concerned about what the environmental impact or the health impact would affect people in Peabody during the 10-day operation that it would be for the 239 hours. I've asked that question quite a bit from different people. I've asked that from Jake. I've asked that from the economic person that you had, the advisor that you had here a couple of weeks ago, last month, I think. Weren't able to give me an answer to that. The next thing that I was concerned about that wasn't answered was the effect of this on the spot market, the yo-yo rates that Pat had talked about and that Phil had talked about. If we go to the spot market that we did years ago, Pat will corroborate what I said, and we had to have what we've considered yo-yo rates until we instituted what was called a PPA, a purchase power adjustment. Now that's increasing the rates for people because we have to have a certain percentage over what we buy. Now, what people want in this town and what anybody would want as a ratepayer would be consistency in the rates. We need it for our budget. People in everybody in town needs it for their own budget. We can't be buying energy on a spot market. It goes up and down. We don't know what it's going to be. And as Phil has said, as we go further into the future, it'll be we have no idea what these these energy costs are going to be. Also, one thing that Tom Burns had brought up that nobody addressed was, and he brought it up again today. What do we do when we buy on the spot market? It's going to be fossil fuel produced energy. What do we do about that? One resource is better than the other, even though it's the same from the same type of energy. Nobody's addressed that. Nobody has been able to give that answer. And finally, another thing, what Phil had brought up was the no battery alternative. Where is it? How long are we going to how long are we going to wait for that type of alternative? So I want to tell you that I feel that I've spent a lot of time listening and getting educated by people who've come here and given their views and information. And I think that it was very important that we got that. But I got to tell you that these concerns of mine, even though I've asked them directly to people, I remember we had when we had a hearing in the meeting in the town hall, I specifically asked these questions, and they were just blown over. Nobody wanted to answer those. Nobody wanted to talk about those. So I got to tell you that I think because they weren't answered and because there aren't any answers for them, I have to say that I think that it was a good idea that we're in this project, particularly for the fact that if we get out of it, as Tom had said and Phil had said, it's going to cost us a lot of money. And I don't think that it's in the best interest of the ratepayers. So I appreciate the last, I don't know, 4 or 5 months, maybe even 6 months of addressing this issue. But no new information has been given to me. No information, no answers to my questions. And I think that we should we can't constantly deal with this issue. So I think we have to move on. Thank you.
Stephanie?
Yes, I agree with the majority of the board. I believe that 6 years ago we did our due diligence. I don't think at the moment there is a viable alternative to provide us with peak power. I don't think the Peabody project is that negative to Hull, or I don't know the negative impacts of Peabody and the other surrounding towns. I still think there's a lot of unanswered questions, but I do think that given what we voted on 6 years ago and the information that we were given, I still think it's a good project and I still support it.
Thank you. The just a quick update for maybe someone that isn't aware. The new peaker power plant is being built and is going to retire another peak power plant that is oil fired, 30 years old, and this new one will be gas fired with a backup if the need arose to also be able to be run with diesel. But the intent is it's a gas fired plant, gas being cleaner than oil anyway, and 30 years newer, being more modern and a cleaner plant, and the best that we can do today. And peak power regarding batteries, which isn't, like everybody said, is not available. The reason that batteries are not approved as peak power because you can't have them run for more than 4 hours. They dissipate their charge. And peak power has to be able to have the ability to run continually until the problem is solved, until the need for the extra energy is over. And you can't do that with battery power because it needs time to regenerate. It needs to be charged. So at any rate, I appreciate everyone that has come and stuff like that, and I wanted to have this discussion, particularly amongst the board members, to let them speak about what they've learned, and if there's any other further need to discuss this, but other than that, we need to move on with other business issues.
I'd like to make a comment.
Who is this? Yeah, could you identify yourself, please?
Yeah, Steve Tumolo, Hull resident and property owner.
Could you give me your name and address, please, sir?
Sure. And I'll keep it brief. I really appreciate it. Steve Tumolo, Tumolo, 20 Rockland House Road.
Okay.
Okay.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to encourage the Light Board to keep going. You've spoken with such pride about what you've accomplished in moving Hull's energy sources to more and more fossil-free, more and more renewable. You spoke with such pride about what you've accomplished, and you should be proud. I'm really glad that you're naming that with a sense of pride. So I just want to encourage you to keep going. I think by making this choice to go ahead and stay in the Peabody Peak power plant, you're locking ourselves in. You're locking me and all of us into a deal that's not necessarily a good deal. You lock us into something that is set to go to 2050 or beyond. That's not necessarily a good deal for us financially. Like, there's so many unknowns as I read this. It's not necessarily the best deal financially. And I hear what you're saying. We don't have a lot of data. I get that. And I wish too I was hearing more data. But I think if you choose tonight for more flexibility, if you choose tonight to say, it isn't even online yet, so it's not even something that's completely built and online yet. Let's see what else is there. Let's get more data. Let's find what other options there are. Let's just pursue what getting out of this would cost. Let's just get more information. I think rushing into an affirmation tonight would be locking us in to a deal that's not necessarily a good deal, when we can continue the proud road you've already charted. We can continue going as a leader in the South Shore and all of Massachusetts, simply by saying, let's get more information. Let's maybe not withdraw tonight, but let's get more information. Let's find out how much it'll cost. What are the alternatives? Can you factor in conservation? I know I heard one person say we want to keep our lifestyle exactly the way it is. Well, we have gotten new, and this will be my last point. We have gotten so much more new information the past 6 years. The world has changed in 6 years. Just recently, a whole global group of scientists, the IPCC, used the word unlivable to describe our planet, that it's potentially going to be unlivable. So if we want to be leaders, we have to do, I think, a little extra, go the extra mile to make Hull give us a better shot at not losing. I live, very close to high tide. So just give us a better shot at having a Hull in 2050 and 2060. I think you can make a decision tonight to give us a better shot at having a Hull and having a Hull that stays a leader. So I'm asking you, I know you're tired of hearing this. I know it's been a long road, much longer for you than I've weighed in, but I'm just asking you to get more of that data, find more alternatives. I think we don't want to lock ourselves into this. It's not a good deal financially in the long run, and it's certainly not a good deal for the people of Hull. That's my 2 cents, and I appreciate the time.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Hang on a minute, please. Hang on, please. Thank you, sir, for your comments, and I appreciate the fact that you recognize my pride. I'm born and brought up in this town, and I am proud of it. But I'll also give you a little bit of history in the town about keep going. Well, we have kept going, and that's why we are 62%, and we continue to look into different alternative ways to be able to both save energy, and such as quite a few years ago, we changed all of the traffic control to LED. Just a few years ago, we changed all of the street lighting to LED, because what does that do? That lowers the energy that we have to purchase that may or may not be fed to us fossil fuels. So we're reducing the amount of generation that is required for some of those things, along with one of the project that Jake brought before the board to support was the tidal experiment that's going to take place eventually down the duck. We continue to look at this. Thank you for recognizing it. So we're not giving up. It's just sometimes something has to give a little bit to make sure that we meet the requirements, and also to get out of this deal with the impact financially, and that will affect a great number of residents. We have 40 to 45% elderly or low income in the town. It's tough enough for them to pay their regular light bill now without penalties that are added to it, such as that. And this is not just a financial consideration. It's also a health consideration. We listened long and hard about the Peabody situation, but as Dan mentioned, that we really weren't given a great deal of information that, kickback to explain for that 239 hours, the real effects of that. And I stand on what I said earlier, that we're retiring a 30-year-old oil-fired plant. So I still think it's a good deal 6 years ago, and it's still a good deal and a good thing for our ratepayers in the town of Hull to be able to have the board be able to manage its budgeting and the cost of electricity to all of our residents. So there's more than a few people that have, maybe the silent majority, whatever, that may not have weighed in, but we're in touch with a lot of people and hear a lot from other people also. So at any rate, having said that, I'll just ask the board if we want to do anything. I'll recognize Judith. Judith, would you like to say something?
Pat,
Could you
there's
just
been
identify
a lot of good comments.
Judith, just to stay in keeping with what I asked for other people, would you just identify yourself and your
Sure. My name's Judith Van Ham. I live on Strawberry Hill. I've lived here 50 years. And I've seen that, what Hull has accomplished with the wind turbines. I think that what is required right here is some planning so that we have an alternative to this. I don't know if you have an alternative, whether then you can choose to use the power from that new source. That's a possibility. But what concerns me the most is that Hull's existence depends on the ocean staying in the ocean. And in order for that to happen, we need to be recognized as doing, really being out in front to get to 100% clean energy so that others can follow us. And this is small, but it's going in the wrong direction. And if we were able to buy some time, say 6 months, to come up with an alternative that is fossil fuel free, it would make a whole lot of sense.
Thank you, Judith. Erwin, could you just identify yourself and your address, please?
Yes, hi, Erwin Nessoff, 165 North Truro Street. Thank you for recognizing me. I can understand that you did your due diligence 6 years ago, and 6 years ago, this may have seemed like the best choice. A lot has happened in 6 years. We know a lot more about the impacts of climate change than we did 6 years ago. But my concern is that you're locking us into a 30-year commitment of old energy production, when there is every month, every week, every month, every year, there are new ways of and new innovations of saving energy, new ways of producing energy. And in 15 years, 20 years, this is going to be, or 5 years, this is going to be old sources of energy, and we're going to be locked into it for 30 years. So my concern is that, yeah, we've done a lot, but we're going to be behind the 8 ball in a few years from now, when battery production or other sources of peak power are produced and available to us. And I just think it would be a shame for us to lock ourselves in going 30 years forward based on what was known 6 years ago when you signed the contract. So I really urge you to slow this process down, to rethink it, and take the time to see what are the new innovations that are coming down that we could take advantage of. Because we all know it's not going to take 30 years before this plant is obsolete. It will be obsolete much sooner than that, but we'll still be buying energy for the next 30 years from this plant. So again, I ask you, slow it down. Let's wait until we see what new technology is there. Every day it's changing. Battery power has gone, just a couple of years ago, battery powered cars could only go 20 or 30 miles. Now they're going over 300 miles. And we'll see the same thing with electric production. We're seeing across the country where some states and some towns are looking into battery peaker power. And in a couple of years, that might be a good source, but we won't be able to use it because we're locked into this plant for 30 years. So again, I understand that 6 years ago when this decision was made, based on what we knew then and what you knew then, it was a good decision. 6 years out, we need to see if it's still a good decision. And 30 years out, it's going to look like a terrible decision. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I'll just remind everybody that it's a signed contract that was signed 6 years ago. We are committed to it. It's not easy to be able to get out of it, even if we all agreed that it was the right thing to do to get out of it. It represents 239. Mr. McDougall, I'll get to you in a second. Even if everyone agreed that that was the right thing to do to get out of it, it's a very difficult process. It may be an extremely expensive project for all of our ratepayers that rely on us once again to deliver reliable, reasonable cost of electricity, which we've managed to do. We're currently at less than 17 cents a kilowatt hour when our neighbors, the investor owned, are at 22 cents, 25 cents. It's significant. So, and this plant runs 239 hours per year. It is not running 8,600 hours per year, 24/7, 365. It's a minimal amount. I understand many people are of the understanding and their drive is to be able to stop the fossil fuel altogether, 100%. But it may be a little slower process than you may like to see. But we have to, at the same time, take care of our residents. Mr. McDougall, I'll recognize you.
Thank you, Pat. Dave McDougall, 18 Point Allerton Ave in Hull. I just wanted to add my support to the majority of the board members. We live in the present, and I wish all the things that the folks who want a greener earth, I wish those capabilities were available now, but they're not. But we do have a lot of senior citizens, including myself here in Hull, and it's critical to keep the lights on, the heat on, the air conditioning going. I think, you know, the reasons that the board support, the majority of the board supports going forward 2015A are well thought out, well articulated, well grounded in reason, and will protect the most vulnerable of our Hull citizens. So I commend you all, but I also commend the people who want a greener earth. We all want a greener earth, but at the moment, the best choice we have right now is to move forward with 2015A, and to thank you for your time.
Thank you. Polly, would you identify yourself and give us your address, please?
Yes, Polly Rowe, 9 Rockview Road. Thank you for calling on me. Thank you to the board and our other officials for the presentation tonight. I also want to lend my voice to support the board in its decision to stay in this contract. I guess you could call me a member of the silent majority as a quote unquote senior citizen on a fixed income. And I'm aware that there is a price to pay for everything in this world. I care very deeply about the environment, but going from where we are now, where we are committed to this contract, to something where we have absolutely no alternative, we have no idea of its reliability, we have no idea of its cost and affordability, is akin to jumping off a high dive diving board and there's no water in the swimming pool. Okay, it's insanity. One of the things that makes Hull, among so many things, an attractive place to live is the fact that it's a wonderful community in so many aspects, but it has the stability of rates. And if we start fooling around and gambling with the risk management factors on this to save a mere $8 a year or $8, and yet we're going to end up paying through the nose financially. We've not only not accomplished anything, we've lost in a very bad way. And I might remind people that, as somebody who remembers, I believe it was 2015, when for the first time in my life, I was 4 days, the town was 4 days without any power. Okay. And so I said, enough, I'm going to the warming center at the middle school. So we have issues with losing power because of National Grid's feeder lines. We also have continued expanded development in this community with the new residential buildings that are going up and new businesses. That means greater demand. I'm not willing to save $8 a year or whatever the nominal amount is to find out we're going to have brownouts. I think the scale of what we would be gaining versus what we're losing is very much tipped against us if we were to think of leaving this. So I would encourage the board to please vote to stay in this contract. Thank you for listening to me.
Thank you. Phil? You're muted, Phil.
Sorry about that. Just to kind of help again with, context and maybe terminology. So when I hear some of the comments, I guess I'm hearing mixed, concepts being mixed together. So just for people to understand, there are a variety of ways in which the town receives power and has to contract for power. And the best analogy I think that I've ever heard for it is to kind of think about it as a mutual fund of sense. So we have a good idea of kind of how much power we are going to use in any given year. We can be pretty predictive on it. We cannot be 100% predictive, but we can be pretty predictive. And Hull, like other municipals and even like investor-owned utilities, understands the power profile of their customers. And the marketplace, meaning the entities that own power plants, offer contracts to purchasers on a variety of terms. So, if you looked at our power portfolio, you will see that, some of the contracts we have are long-term, some are meaning 20, 30 years, some are mid-term, and some are very short-term. And you do that because you lock in, you want to lock in as much of the long-term, if it's a good cost, as much of your demand for as long as you can, if you're at a really good price per kilowatt hour. And so you're constantly trying to figure that out, and we get assistance from MWIC, we get assistance from the marketplace and the analysis and so forth, and what other municipals are doing, and that's ultimately how we kind of got to 60% non-carbon. Over a course of many years, the Light Department has worked to investigate and buy contracts that, hydropower, there's some nuclear in there, there's some solar in there. We're part owner of a wind farm out in the Berkshires, so forth and so on. And we're going to continue to do that, but that's kind of the day-to-day power, not the peaking power that we're talking about tonight. The peaking power, again, is really that extra nudge of power you need. Excuse me, I just need to turn my phone off. The extra nudge of power you need when everybody comes home on July 5th and turns their air conditioner on at 5 p.m. And that's kind of beyond what you had contracted for. And but you still have to have the power, so you put it on. You bought some peaking capacity, or you go to the open marketplace. But usually, when you're at the open marketplace in that environment, the power is fairly expensive, or can be very expensive, because other people are trying to buy that peaking power at the same time. Because the weather will be kind of driving that decision and kind of the boss area. So when you look at when one of the previous speakers said, we really wish you guys would continue to pursue, strategies to get us to non-carbon. We've never stopped pursuing those. And as a matter of fact, we started pursuing those as early as 1989 when we put Hull Wind 1 up. And we continue to pursue that. And we've gotten to the point where, again, we're well ahead of any state standard. We're actually well ahead of most municipals. And we are certainly far ahead of investor-owned utilities in terms of the percentage share of the energy that we buy and use that is non-carbon. And we are even looking at a battery, becoming potentially a part owner of a battery installation that would be providing that power that you use, not peaking, but kind of day to day, so that it would have time to go offline, recharge, and so forth. And that's a project that we'll be bringing to the Light Board for consideration sometime in the next couple of months. MWIC is doing kind of due diligence on that. So the real dilemma here is it's not that you can just kind of pull a plug on this. At any point in time, I suspect 5 years from now, if somebody said, hey, 2015A isn't turning out the way you want it to be, why don't you see if you can sell the remaining years of your commitment to 2015A to somebody else? You can always do that if somebody wants to buy it. If somebody doesn't want to buy it, then you're kind of locked into it. So I don't think that I think there's a decision people are asking tonight. Well, actually, there has been no motion made by any board member to actually do something. There's been a lot of discussion. We've had about 15 hours of discussion in public meetings. We've had lots of public input and commentary, but there's actually never been a motion by a board member to actually divest in 2015A that's actually come to a vote. So I guess, Mr. Chairman, I would ask that, is there actually a motion in this discussion, or are we just doing the discussion to keep doing the discussion?
No, I wanted to bring this to a close today. So,
well, are you asking for somebody to make a motion, a board member?
I will make a motion. I will be glad to make a motion, but I'd like to respond to some other things before I make the motion, but I don't want to cut you off, Phil or Pat, if you have some additional comments.
No, so one point is I guess, like any other contract, you can always, at any point in a contract, or most times in a contract, you can always seek a way out. And sometimes there's a cost to do that. Sometimes you're able to get out at face, and sometimes you have to sell at a discount. So if you're 10 years into the future and you see something that says, hey, this isn't as good as we thought it was going to be, or this is something that we want to get out of, then you see if you can get out of it. Even today, if you were to do that, I suppose if the board was interested in doing that, we would ask MWIC to explore that, and you would kind of understand what it would take to do that. Doesn't mean you would actually be able to do it, because if there's no willing buyer, you either stay in it or you buy out your share and walk away at a loss. Our share on this, and Panos, correct me if I'm wrong, I think our share on this is about 3% or so of the total build cost.
It's 2.38.
2.38, which, and the total build on this is, I think, about 85 million.
Yep.
So to walk away from this, you're looking at something in the range of about $1.9 million, plus whatever other penalties you might have, because there's interest and so forth on that over time. So, that's your order of magnitude of decision. If you can't get somebody to take your place, and I'm not sure you could get somebody to take your place at pace. Maybe you'd get them at discount. I don't know. Just know that nobody else in the project is walking away from it. That's not necessarily a reason why you would not want to consider that. But I'm assuming that in many communities, the same number of folks that are that are urging the whole Light Board to divest. I'm assuming the Peabody crew that showed up at the whole Light Board meeting also showed up at the other participants' meetings and had the same plea. Apparently to no differing effect. But that's all I have to say. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. But I'm just hoping you're going to actually have a motion and a vote, because we've consumed, many hours on this.
Yep. Just one quick comment on the, because I remember this from years of rate studies go by, that, to look at $2 million, that represents about 5 cents a kilowatt hour on the rate. So if we're at almost 17 cents now, so we would then be pushing ourselves pretty darn close to investor owned of 22 cents a kilowatt hour. So anyway, having said that, I'll back to Jim on to make a motion. I'm just asking Jake, did you want?
I want to make a motion, but I want to make a couple comments before I make the motion. And can everyone
Go
hear
ahead.
me? Because my internet connection's a little, I'm in a hotel.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. So I wanted to correct a couple points. First of all, I want to address Dan because he made his points a while ago. Mr. Ciccarello, the PM 2.5 and PM 10 are incredibly well studied in terms of their impact to human life and the effect it has on air quality and the lower air quality that results from combusting natural gas. But that only talks about the emissions at the point of combustion. That doesn't talk about the 1 to 9% of emissions from actually getting the methane from where it is extracted through the pipeline to here. And so 1 to 9% of the methane you get is actually lost to the atmosphere. And one of the important things to understand is that methane is 34 times more powerful in a very bad way at trapping heat in our upper atmosphere. And I know this is getting a little bit technical, but the point is, it was also raised, what are the health effects and all that. That's been pretty well documented, and it's not hard to read about that. But I want to move on, and I can come back
discussed.
to that.
When I asked those questions, I don't mean to interrupt you, but when I asked those questions, none of that information, no information was given about what the effect would be for the 10 days for 239 hours. I
Well,
understand what you're talking about is very generalized, but I was talking about specific effect that would happen for this 239 hours. And your expert was not able to give me any answer for it. So.
Yep, and that is something that MWIC should have studied before even proposing the project, and they didn't. The rules changed shortly after they actually got the project started, and if they had done this even a year later, they would have had to do a pretty, I don't think it's called an environmental impact study, but some more digging on their air emissions permit side. The fact that we keep talking about 239 hours is a misstatement. That is a guesstimate, but it's not accurate. So the air permit that this facility has allows it to run 1,250 hours per year. And it's designed to combust methane, also known as natural gas. And a lot of folks say, oh, well, burning natural gas is cleaner. Yes, at the source point, but the 1 to 9% of methane that's lost to get it out of the ground through the pipeline and there is incredibly bad for global warming. It's much, much worse than a lot of people understand. And beyond that, I specifically and explicitly in our last meeting asked Matt Ide, and for those who don't know, Matt Ide essentially runs MWIC, and he said, or sorry, I'll say the question. I asked, does this project own pipeline capacity? Now, my husband's father is the manager of Connecticut Natural Gas, and I have, we've obviously become close, and I've learned an awful lot about the natural gas markets and the problems. And if you don't own pipeline capacity, anytime that you're even close, never mind being in a peak demand situation, when you're close to it, the first facilities to get shut down are the large users that don't own capacity. So the vast majority of the time that we're in a peak condition, it's not burning methane, it's burning diesel. And that diesel is much more expensive than the methane. So a lot of the numbers that have been presented are incorrect. And we have had Stratagem present, and there was a PhD who knows more than all of us combined because her entire career has been devoted to studying energy markets. And she, through her study, demonstrated that if we were to sell our project for what we went into it, whatever that fee is, if we could sell our share dollar for dollar to someone else, the savings by going to the spot market that a few folks have been scared of with some inaccurate information here that's very frustrating for me as somebody who's devoted a tremendous amount of time in learning about this. And some of my fellow board members are stating that we haven't presented any information when in fact we have. It's clear you haven't read all of the reports that have been sent. That's okay, but it's frustrating when you say it hasn't been presented because in fact it has multiple times. My point is that getting out of this, if we get out of it, we're actually going to save the average ratepayer in Hull about $8 per year for the next 10 to 15 years. And the most senior energy market study done by a PhD who's devoted her entire career to this demonstrated that. And if you want to argue with her, I welcome you to do it, but don't try to fool yourselves and the rest of town stating that this will save you money. It will not. It will cost you more money. I guarantee it. It's already been modeled. And that is how you need to make decisions on data. You do not make decisions on emotions. You may do that personally, but when it comes to running a large organization like ours, we need to make it on data. And the data that existed when the decision was made was very different. And that decision was not a bad one, but the data and the information we have now and the markets are really different. And if you think that staying in this project for 30 years is a good idea, it's not. There's no right way to do the wrong thing. It is the wrong thing. And further, I want to add, 2.38%, yes, but if we don't start showing that we're going to commit to getting there before 30 years from now, when are we going to do it? Massachusetts has banned the sale of new gasoline cars after 2035. I mean, we've done an awful lot here. We're changing the technology, the rate of technology development in the energy markets is far surpassed even the rate of change for the processor speeds in computers. It's like doubled every 18 months or something. The energy density we can get out of batteries is improving. The life expectancy of the batteries is improving. This will cost us more money. And going to the spot market, we will not have a brownout. I promise you we will not. It was my idea to bring diesel generators into town so we don't lose power. I ran on a platform that was about reliability, additional redundancy, and bringing more clean energy. I call it energy independence, making more of our own energy in home. I ran on that. I believe in it, but I will not sacrifice our ability to keep the lights on for anything. That's number one. But number two is affordability, and this is not affordable. So I've said my piece. Mr. Chairman, I make a motion for us to request that MWIC sell our shares or tell us what they can sell the shares for. And if you want me to rephrase the motion, I'm happy to do that. But I'm not saying spend $2 million and get out and breach the contract. I'm saying tell MWIC we'd like to sell our shares and see if they can find a buyer for what we put into it or near it and evaluate that, because I think that there's a real case to be made for us to get out of this and continue to look at the newer technologies coming on. There will be newer, and I actually missed one point, I apologize. It was said that this is replacing an already existing peaker plant. That is absolutely true, but the existing one is 1/3 the size of the one that has been permitted and is under construction. So this is going to add more peak capacity than what is there. So it's not 1 for 1, it's 1 for 3.
Okay. All right. There's a motion been made on the floor. Is there a second to the motion? Hearing none. I'll ask again. Is there a motion? A second to the motion? I don't get a second, Jake.
Tom, you came off of mute. Did you have anything to say?
Pardon me?
The only thing I wanted to say is Phil brought up a really significant point with regards to context. And the 0.5% that the power that we're going to use out of this plant we never spent this amount of time talking about anywhere near our purchases. When we purchased power in Berkshire Wind, when we looked at purchasing power from wind plants up in Maine, I think the context of how much power is going to come from this 0.5%. We use average 15, 16 megawatts a day. Probably in the summertime it might be 17 or 18. So I agree with you about the methane. It's not a good actor, but this plant's going to get built. If Hull separates from this project at 2.3%, the plant will still get built. And we're going to be out on the spot market. We're going to be spending more. I think the context of what we're looking at, we're mixing the macro climate economics that we all agree about, that, you know, whether the sea level is going to rise or the temperatures are going to get hotter. You know, no one wants that. But at the same time, we have to look at the reliability, the affordability for the whole residents. And that's what we're looking for, Jake. We're not,
we've done that, and an expert that has more expertise than Matt Ide and Emwick provided.
Is this the same expert that failed to give us an answer on who she was funded by after we asked her 3 times?
She told us she was funded by the Clean Energy Group. That was answered clearly and plainly.
Well, maybe to you it was. It wasn't answered clearly to me. The Clear Energy Group. Who is the Clean Energy Group?
I believe that they are out of Vermont, and I can get you more information on that, but they funded the study. But they did not fund her career. My point was that, you know, her career was built on, and her PhD is on these energy markets. And it's not just her and her firm, there's others. You know, they checked their facts, and Matt and I did not disagree with what she was saying. They both agreed that the very likely outcome financially is somewhere in the middle. If we could sell our shares for what we went into it, or very near that, there'd be somewhere between $4 to $8 per year for the average ratepayer in Hull over the next 10 to 15 years. And by then, the anticipated development, right, we have some of the most impressive and exciting wind energy projects being built off of Massachusetts and now Connecticut, and we've got some down in New Jersey as well that are coming on. Not that we'd buy power from New Jersey necessarily, but my point is the energy markets are changing so rapidly. To stay locked into this for 30 years when we know the model proved the next 10 to 15 years that we could save $4 to $8 if we could get out, it's worth a shot. For, hey, can we sell our little share of it? And I probably could. I wouldn't be surprised if Peabody bought it. Would it be at a slight discount? Maybe it brings it down to $3 of savings per year. But even if it was a break even, I could get out and have that opportunity to adopt a better, cleaner alternative, you know, 5, 6 years from now, not 30 years from now when this thing is finally at the end of its useful life.
All right, I think we're gonna move on now. At this point, we got some other information that business we need to handle. It's getting to be 7:35 now. We're gonna just put this behind us for now. So at any rate, let's move on to operation manager's report, please.
Good evening, everybody. I have a couple of things to report. The temporary generators for the winter standby have been removed. We didn't have any incidences where we had to use the generators, but they were there just in case. Also, last week we had a third-party independent contractor come in and evaluate the Hull 1 and Hull 2 turbines for their conditions, and we expect a report from them within the next week or so to give us what their conditions are, and based on that we will make a decision on what we want to do with Hull Wind 1. As you know, it was determined that the bearings on the gearbox have failed, and we've done a borescope testing of those bearings, and it looks like they're completely gone. So within the next couple of weeks I'll get a full report of what's going to happen, what they found, and then I will present to Phil and the board the report, and we'll make a decision on what we want to do with that turbine accordingly. Other than that, I don't have, everything has been going fine. Mike, assistant operations manager, might have some more day-to-day activities that he wants to report on, but that would be my report.
Mike?
Thanks, Pat. Yeah, the only thing I have to add is the Atlantic Ave road widening project. We've been given the go-ahead to start on that. We have about 44 poles that we need to relocate and replace. We have our contractor lined up who provides our day-to-day linemen. They're going to supplement the crews so that we can install those poles starting in the next couple of weeks. So we'll be busy with that project this spring into the summer. That's all I have.
Okay. I just wanted to ask a quick question if I could. Hull Wind 2, is Hull Wind 2 down right now?
Yeah, Hull Wind 2 is down. We had Vestas out on Wednesday. There's a phasing relay that is burnt up. They had to order those parts. They expect to be back in town next week to replace those, and it'll be back online sometime after that.
Thank you. Phil?
I just wanted to add on the Atlantic Ave job that Panos and Mike have been doing a great job coordinating with the state. That's actually it's a grant-funded project. Ultimately, the town was responsible for the initial engineering work and getting all the environmental permits, and we applied for and chased that project for close to 10 years through the state grant process. And then we've ultimately gotten the grant. So the total project cost of $13 million in the state. We picked up about $1.5 million of that in design and permitting and so forth. But the work that the light department is doing to move those poles is not paid for by the ratepayers. Is what they call a force main account in effect. And so the project is paying for the work associated with moving the poles.
Wonderful. That's great. Okay. Any questions on the managers or anything?
I would like to know the status of the billing software change, and also the I think we call it balance or budget billing initiative offering plan.
I know Mike and Panos have been chasing that. We're actually moving, investigating, I think moving to a different vendor, but Mike or Panos, could you provide a more succinct update, please?
Mike, if you want to go,
Yeah.
But I will just give an overview. The existing, as we've talked about, the existing billing software provider has basically failed us. And we have been in discussions with 2 or 3 other vendors, and we're making headway on those. I will let Mike bring us up to date on that one.
Yeah, with the company that we're talking with, we've reached out to 3 of their customers that are municipal light plants, and we've gotten feedback from 2, so we're waiting to hear back on a 3rd. And then if we move forward with that company, they said about a month to get it all up and running, and then we will then have the ability to do both balance billing and any other rate changes or augmentations to the bill will be a lot more smoother than what we've been dealing with the current company.
Thank you, Mike. Any other questions for the management? Okay. We don't have any minutes tonight to approve. Old business, any old business before the board? Any new business? Hearing none, is there a motion to adjourn? We hear a motion to adjourn.
Burns. Make motion to adjourn.
Is there a second to the motion?
I second.
Thank you, Dan. All right, all those in favor of adjourning, if you could say by aye, Cannon.
Aye, Burns.
Aye, Chicarello.
Hi, Landry.
Aye, Valencourt.
Thank you, everyone, for attending, and we'll talk to you next month. Well, we should just quickly figure out what's our next meeting. Stephanie, you usually have a calendar.
And hold on. I usually do when I put it away. Hold on. The next meeting would be the 19th of May.
Okay. That'll just be, because will that be after the election?
Right, I believe the election's on the 16th.
Okay, so that'll be just for reorganization. Unless something happens to come before the board, but that's typically what we do. So May 19th
Right.
would be the next. Okay. All right. Good night, everybody. Have a good dinner.
Good night.
Good night.
Thanks, Pat.
Thank you very much. Have a good night.
Good night.
Thank you.